No position on the team was more criticized in 2024 than Georgia's receivers. The Bulldogs led Power 4 conferences in drop passes, and top receivers Arian Smith and Dominic Lovett left for the NFL. Georgia brought in two high-profile transfers, Zachariah Branch and Noah Thomas, SC and A&M, respectively. And Taylor and C.J. Wiley are two highly regarded freshman receivers. Branch had 1,863 all-purpose yards during his 2 seasons at SC, including 2 kick returns for touchdowns in 2023. He caught 78 passes for 823 yards and 3 scores. That's what Mark Schlabach wrote about Georgia over at ESPN, talking about some things to watch as we get ready for spring ball, which will start. It says SEC's key storylines and players to watch. It's definitely the receivers. Now, listen, yesterday I talked about the 3 positions being that are, the 3 spots to pay the most attention to were offensive line, quarterback, and the front 7. You're not going to be able to pass the ball if your offensive line is not functional. Now, they were not bad pass protection last year. Georgia did pretty well, on throwing the ball, generally speaking, but without balance, you're asking too much to me of this Georgia program in 2025. And Zachariah Brandt, they've got some receivers now that should be better. Noah Thomas was extremely productive at A&M for them. If there's one person I would pay the most attention to in terms of, I'm going to set my expectations really high for this person. I mean, I wouldn't do that with any of these guys, but Noah Thomas is a guy that was very productive at A&M. And when you've been productive in this league, you're probably going to be productive again. So I would pencil him in as someone to pay attention to. Branch, extremely explosive, had a great 2023. His 24 was not as good as his 23. Did he regress? Is SC, just not where they need to be? I don't know. Hey, make sure you're signing up for our newsletter. Make sure you're signing up for our newsletter. Spring ball is here. We got 6 weeks of football at Georgia. Make sure that you're signing up for our newsletter. It's free. The link is right down below. I think for me, when you talk about Taylor and Wiley, I wouldn't get too far in front there. I mean, Dylan Bell, you've got multiple guys that are going to get their shot this season. Dylan Bell is not a guy that's going to get his shot. Georgia needs him to be productive. They need 600 yards from Dylan Bell this season. I don't think that's asking too much considering his ability. Now, that can be. Last season he had 466 total yards. 466 receiving yards. I don't think 600, 700 yards is asking too much. I certainly don't think 600 or 700 all-purpose yards from Dylan Bell is asking too much. I'm not going to stop talking about Dylan Bell, okay? Now, a season ago, it looked like Georgia had a lot of well, they did, and 2 of them didn't make it to halfway through the season. They looked like they were going to have a very different-looking offense, and unfortunately for Georgia fans, they did. It relied too much on the pass, not enough on the run. I don't really know that you can expect that this season. With the anticipation that Gunnar Stockton is going to be your quarterback, how many games is Gunnar going to throw 400 yards passing? So it's going to be different, it speaks to how important the run game is for Georgia. It's always important in this league to run the ball effectively. It's always important. If you don't do that, you got a problem. And Georgia had a problem last year. They had a problem for sure. So I think Thomas and Branch, you're immediately trying to plug them in and say, hey, we need you guys to be, 2 of our top 4 receivers. We need you to, you got to produce. Dylan Bell's got to be one of the top 4 receivers. And then after that, it's up for grabs. Tuggle, Taylor, Wiley. I mean, there's opportunities there for someone to come in and be a top 4 receiver at Georgia. If you're a top 4 receiver at Georgia, that means you're going to be starting occasionally. That means you're going to be playing a bunch. And, Georgia needs some explosion. They really need some explosion. All receivers are explosive, so this is all relative. But Georgia's got to figure out how they can get some pop in the passing game, and not rely on your quarterback throwing it 35, 40 times a game. We saw too many times last season Carson Beck being asked to do too much. He just was. I mean, I'm going to go back right now. He had 50 throws against Alabama, 48 against Mississippi State, 41 against Texas, 40 against Florida, 40 against Tennessee, 40 against Georgia Tech. That's way too many. That's half the season, and it's more than half the Power 5 games. This is going to have to get back to, normality some. And there's no telling how many would have had to throw against Texas, although it seemed like in the championship game, although it seemed like it was much more under control, it seemed like that way. I see where his Hannah Calvin, his girlfriend, Carson's girlfriend, was saying that to ESPN. I was not involved at all in his move. Man, I just don't care. Like, I don't mean that bad or good. I mean, I don't know why people are so obsessed with her. And, as it relates to Carson, I mean, it's Carson's life. Just let him do what he wants. That's his prerogative. He can, as Bobby Brown would say. But, at Georgia, these receivers are important. The offense really is going, is it going to be effective? Is it going to have some punch? Are you going to see explosion? I don't know. I mean, it should be more explosive, but I can't promise that. In 23, when you had explosive players, you had explosion on the offensive side of the ball. You just did. And, this was one of the worst. 2024 was one of the worst seasons of offense at Georgia in a while. Let me give some perspective on that. So Georgia had gone from being number 10 and 21 in total offense, in scoring offense, 5-5-5, okay? So they had gone consecutive seasons in a row, 4 seasons in a row, being a top 10 offense. Top 5 in 2023, top 5 in 2024. These were 2022. These were very good offenses. Things, and then suddenly, it was just not good. And they went to 38th, which was what they were in 2020. This past season was not dissimilar to the 2020 season. Now, y'all weren't there for that. Y'all weren't there for that, but I was. And it was not a lot of fun. It was not dissimilar to this past season. In 2019, Georgia was not even they were 50th in the country in offense. So it wasn't as bad as then, but you could feel it. And Kirby's time at Georgia has certainly been about defense. There've only been one time in his tenure where they've not been top 50 in offense, which was his first season. But defensively, they've always been spectacular. So it's given them the ability. They just bullied Texas both times that they played them. If you play that Ole Miss game in Athens, it could change some things. But look, the fact of the matter is that this team is going to have to be better offensively. And whether you're talking about the team being better offensively because of the run game, because of the passing explosion, I don't know. You don't have to be any particular way. You can be a triple option and be an explosive offense. But what we saw last season is not going to work. It starts with the offensive line. There's no question. It starts with the offensive line. But with what Mark's writing here, it's right. I mean, the player, perhaps the position that's got to be noticeably better, that's the wrong way to put it. The position that's got to be better in terms of explosion is quite clearly the receivers, but they can't do that without the offensive line. Again, if we're baking and we don't have flour and salt, it's hard to bake. And right now, there wasn't a lot of baking going on. There wasn't a lot of explosion from the Georgia offense. If you want things to go well, you have to have all the ingredients, and the ingredients got to perform. So, it's time now. There's not been a lot. There's been a few times, 19 and 20, where Georgia's offense has struggled in back-to-back seasons. And this could be one of those times. We don't know. Okay, we don't know. This is going to be a real test of Kirby, the offense, Mike Bobo, Stacy, James Coley, all of them. It's going to be a real test for this group. Hey, sign up for our newsletter. Thank you for watching.